Hey there, it's me from my channel, and today I'm gonna show you how to cook meatballs. This is something that I've done many times for my family, and if you're looking for an easy, delicious way to make meatballs, then this is definitely the recipe for you. We will begin by making the meatballs, and then we will talk about how to cook them. Alright, so let's get started with the meatballs. So the first thing you need is ground beef. You can use any kind of ground meat that you like. It could be turkey, pork, veal, or in this case, we are going to use ground beef. And I'm going to use 1 pound of ground beef. The next ingredient is breadcrumbs. And the amount of breadcrumbs that you will need depends on the consistency that you want the meatballs to have. And if you want to have more moist meatballs, you're going to add more breadcrumbs. And if you want your meatballs to be more firm and less likely to fall apart, then you will add less breadcrumbs. In this case, I'm going to add 3/4 cup of the breadcrumbs. And it's important to note that these breadcrumbs are not fresh breadcrumbs. These are store-bought panko breadcrumbs. So if you have fresh breadcrumbs that you made at home, you'll probably need a little bit more of those. So just keep that in mind. Next ingredient is Parmesan cheese. And I'm just going to add 1/2 cup of the Parmesan cheese. Then we are going to add 1 large egg. The egg acts as the binder for all of these ingredients. Next, we're going to add some milk. And the milk will help the egg bind better with the other ingredients. And also, it will add juiciness to the meatballs. And I'm just going to add about 2 tablespoons of milk. Now, let's talk about the seasonings. In this case, we are going to season with salt and black pepper. Of course, you can add any kind of seasoning that you like to your meatballs. This is just what we like in our house. I'm just going to add a little bit of salt, maybe 1 to a teaspoon, and then I'm going to add some black pepper. Now, if you want to add Italian seasoning or any other kinds of seasonings, you can do that as well. Just keep in mind that these meatballs are going to go into a tomato sauce. So if you're adding a lot of oregano or Italian seasoning, your meatballs might taste a little bit bitter. So I would recommend adding the seasonings that really complement the tomato sauce. So in this case, we are not going to add any oregano. Now let's mix everything together. And the most important thing here is not to overmix the meatball mixture. Once you start overmixing, you are developing the gluten in the meatball mixture, and that will result in tougher meatballs. So once everything is combined and you don't see any dry ingredients, then you are good to go. You don't need to keep on mixing and mixing and mixing. Now let's talk about the process of forming the meatballs. And the most important thing here is to try to keep the meatballs as uniform as possible. You want them to be the same size so they cook at the same rate. And the easiest way to do that is to form the meatballs in a little muffin tin. So I'm going to take a little scoop and I'm going to add the meatball mixture to the muffin tin. And if you're wondering why I'm using a muffin tin, it's because it makes the process a lot easier. You can make even sized meatballs really easily with a muffin tin. Now, if you don't have a muffin tin, you can always roll the meatballs by hand. But if you roll them by hand, it's going to be a little bit harder to get them to be the exact same size. And you can see I'm pressing down and I'm making sure that the meatballs are level with the top of the muffin tin. And I'm going to repeat that for all the meatballs. And now that the meatballs are ready, we can talk about how to cook them. Now I'm going to be cooking these meatballs in a tomato sauce. I already have the tomato sauce simmering on the stove. And if you're interested in this recipe, I will leave a link below to the tomato sauce video. So now that the tomato sauce is simmering, I'm going to gently drop the meatballs into the sauce. I'm not going to crowd the pan. I'm going to make sure that there's enough room between each meatball so they can cook evenly. And of course, if you have a lot of meatballs, you will probably need to work in batches. Now, when cooking meatballs in a tomato sauce, it's very important that you don't overcook the meatballs. Overcooked meatballs will be very dry and hard. And nobody likes a dry meatball. And the way you know that the meatballs are done cooking is by their internal temperature. The internal temperature of the meatballs needs to reach 160 degrees Fahrenheit. And I have an instant thermometer here. So I'm just going to insert the instant thermometer into the thickest part of the meatball. And if you don't have an instant thermometer, you can always use a regular thermometer. It just won't be as quick. And the thermometer reading should be about 160 degrees Fahrenheit. And when cooking meatballs in a tomato sauce, they usually cook pretty quickly. They shouldn't take much longer than 20 minutes. And in this case, the meatballs are already reaching 160 degrees Fahrenheit, so the meatballs are almost done cooking. I'm just going to continue to simmer the meatballs in the tomato sauce until the sauce is thickening. And since the sauce is thickening, I'm going to continue to stir the meatballs so they don't stick to the bottom of the pan. Now, if you want to serve the meatballs with pasta, you're going to want to finish the pasta while the meatballs are simmering in the sauce. And I already have a pot of water boiling on the stove, and I'm going to finish the pasta according to the package instructions. After about 20 minutes, the meatballs reached 160 degrees Fahrenheit and the sauce is thickening. So the meatballs are ready to be served. Now, when serving the meatballs, I'm going to use a slotted spoon and I'm going to put the meatballs on top of the pasta. Of course, you can serve the meatballs without the pasta. You can serve them with mashed potatoes or polenta or any other side dish that you like. But in this case, we are going to serve the meatballs with the pasta and we are going to pour a little bit of the sauce on top of the meatballs. And if you want to add Parmesan cheese on top of the meatballs, you can do that as well. Now let's talk about serving size. How many meatballs should I put on top of each serving of pasta? Well, it really depends on the size of your meatballs. In this case, my meatballs were pretty small, so I'm going to add 4 meatballs per serving. Alright, and here is the finished dish. This is pasta with meatballs and tomato sauce. And I think this looks absolutely amazing. It smells delicious, and it tastes even better. I hope you enjoyed this recipe, and if you did, please give this video a thumbs up. And also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. We would love to have you join the family, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.